computer. I am now recording. Share screen. I'm now sharing. Okay. Believe I'm now recording again. And let's see, I don't need to be in this. I'm going to go to my, what do they call this? The Charms menu, I believe, in Windows 10. Everything's got different names now. I'm going to scroll down until I get to Microsoft, and I'm going to see Microsoft SQL Server Tools 1.7. Do you see that? Okay. And inside of Microsoft SQL Server, do you see Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio? Okay, if you have done an install, you should see that. You may make a shortcut to that and put that out on your desktop, and should. I'm going to go ahead and execute that. And now we're going to be talking a little bit about Microsoft SQL Server for a minute. Right now, SQL Server is running. SQL Server started off running when we started the computer. SQL Server started running. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It's not always something you want to happen on your own personal computer at home. Here, we don't care. Here, these computers spend all their day sitting around watching Judge Judy on the TCP/IP connection. They might as well do a little bit of work. Okay, but your computer at home, you don't really want it to start off running SQL Server every time because it drinks your bandwidth, it drinks your processor time, not to mention your battery. So I'm going to show you how to make it not start every time, but then when you want to use it, you have to start it. It's like a light switch. If you're not paying the electrical bill, you really don't care. Just leave the lights on, and then when you walk into the room, the lights are already on for you. But if you're paying the electric bill, you probably want to turn them off. Are you with me? Okay, we're going to talk about that. For right now, we are sitting here, and finally it came up, SQL Server. Notice that the first of it is our computer name, the backslash, and SQL Express is the name of our SQL Server instance. If you install two of them, the next one will be named SQL Express 1. They're even hard to delete. So notice that I have Windows authentication. Now, Windows authentication means that if I am the Windows user who just installed SQL Server, I am authenticated to SQL Server. Does that make sense? I own it. I was the one that just installed it. Therefore, I should be a user of SQL Server. That is not always the way you want it, because sometimes you want other people to be able to use SQL Server who are not you with respect to Windows. So SQL Server is running, but the only person who can use it is the person who installed it, or a Windows administrator. Okay, so we don't necessarily want that. So we're going to come back to that in just a moment. We're going to change that because I want to be able to authenticate to SQL Server with a username and a password. Right now, if I just say connect, bingo, I'm connected. Watch this. Hold my beer. Connect, I'm connected. Not only am I connected, but I am an administrator. We don't necessarily want that to happen because I don't want everybody connecting as the administrator. Go ahead and connect though. Now, just say connect. Okay. Take off the headset and troubleshoot. Other problems? Problems with our world. Okay, so this should work the same way at home. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, just because it doesn't have to happen in this order, but I find it's best if I do it in this order. I'm going to create a database. I don't have a database yet. I have a database engine running, but I don't have a database. And I'm going to create a couple of databases because we're going to be using two different databases in this class. So I don't have them yet. It's a little bit like in Access, you will remember, you had to create a database. You said new database, and it created the database file. Well, that's essentially what we're going to do now. We're going to create two databases, and they will be created. And typically in database, you don't say save. They're saved. So I'm going to create two databases, and let's go to the first one down under databases. You see what I just clicked? I'm going to right-click that guy, right-click him, and I'm going to say new database. Are you with me? New database. Now I'm going to give it a database name. Now, I want you to use your own name here. I'm going to give it the name because my name is S.W. Smith underscore capital D, capital B. My name is S.W. Smith, Stephen W. Smith, underscore DB. So that tells me it's my database. This is my place where I can do anything I want to do. I own it. Question. Yours will have a different name. That's fine. Now, there's some options I have here. We don't need to change any of the options. We could. We have log files where it logs it and all kinds of stuff that we can do. That's really for another class or maybe for later on in this one. We'll talk about those options. For right now, we just need a database. Are you with me? So you have a database that has your name underscore DB. I'm going to click OK. Notice if I go up here, I see him. I'm going to create one more. I'm going to right-click databases again. I'm going to say new database. Now this one, I want you to pay attention to the name because this is going to be our class database. So I want it to be the same name here. Everybody has the same name of this one and the same name at home. Ready? Okay, AP, accounts payable. AP stands for accounts payable, underscore capital D, capital B. AP underscore DB. In general, database is not case sensitive. As a rule, database languages are not case sensitive, but we're going to treat them as if they were. So I would like for you to please observe the case, AP underscore capital D, capital B. Please don't make a typo in that. When you finish, click OK. Problems with our world. Goodness, we're doing well. Okay, now, remember a moment ago we talked about the SQL authentication. We're authenticated to the server because we're here, because we got logged into Windows. We knew the password to get into Windows, therefore we know the password to get into SQL Server. Let's make it not be so. Let's make it so you can log in remotely from someplace else, but you have to have your own username and password to get into SQL Server. You want to do that? That's what we're going to do next. So we've created a couple of databases. Now we can give people, any people we want to, the permission to use our databases, but they have to be users of the database. Right now, the user of the database is the Windows user. We're going to change that now. Okay. I'm going to right-click databases. No, excuse me, up above. I'm going to right-click the servers. See the highest level. I'm going up to the highest level. It doesn't matter whether you close it down or not. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to pull down to, well, properties. The bottom, properties. So I right-click the highest level all the way down to properties. The tabs to the left, I'm going to click on security. Properties, security. What do I see here? The first one, server authentication. The first one says Windows authentication. The second one says SQL Server and Windows authentication. That means that if you're going to log in from Windows, you have to be authenticated both ways. But if you come in from outside, I'm going to let you in if all you know is your username and password. So that means you're going to authenticate to the server with a username and a password to the server. So when you start, you're going to have your username and your password. So I'm going to click SQL Server authentication. Rest of the stuff we don't need to worry about. SQL Server authentication. Now, if you are working in the computer lab here, and SQL Server is there, the only way you'll get in there is Windows authentication. That's set up just for Windows. So you'll just have to live with that. That means that it's under deep freeze, and we'll talk more about that as we go on. You're gonna have to run your script to create all your stuff to start, but that takes about 5 seconds. We'll talk about that in just a minute. I'm gonna say okay. Now, will not take effect until SQL Server is restarted. What is it saying I have to restart? SQL Server. Does it say the computer? No, I don't have to bounce the computer. Now, what am I looking at? I'm going to say okay. What is this? What am I running right here? Okay, that's kind of, it's a trick question. And you think you're running the database. What I'm running here is the graphical user interface. If I close the graphical user interface, the SQL Management Studio, and restart the graphical user interface, have I restarted SQL Server? And you're shaking your heads at me. Shake them hard so we can hear them rattle on the okay, no, you haven't. SQL Server is something different. Now I'm going to talk about that for right now. SQL Server. We have our SQL Management Studio. That's this program, this cute little graphical program where we drive our mouse around. And then we have the SQL Server underneath it that's running. Two completely different programs. This is connected. But I can run this without connecting. I can run this and not even have a database. I won't do anything, but I can run it without it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, go ahead and minimize him. I'm going to go to my Windows Administrative Tools. It is okay to put this on your desktop, a shortcut to this. Services. Windows Administrative Tools Services. A little tricky, but you can find it. Hey, you guys have been doing computer stuff. I'm going to open that. And then I'm going to scroll down until I get to Microsoft, Microsoft. No, SQL Server. I don't know why this one starts with SQL. SQL Server, and remember its name, SQL Express. That's why I told you to make note of its name. You have to be able to find it in here. SQL Server, SQL Express. Not worried about agent. We're not worried about the browser. We're worried about SQL Express, SQL Server. Okay, now it's running. I'm going to go ahead and right-click him, and I'm going to click Restart. I could have clicked Stop and then Start again. I'm just going to click Restart. Bounce the server. I did not have to close the management studio. It's fine. It might hiccup, but I don't care. Questions? You can do it from inside there. There's a stop, but once you stop it, you won't be able to start it. I don't know if there's is there a restart option? Does it say restart? Try it and see. If you stop it, you won't be able to start it from within. You were? So I lied. Yes, you can do it from within the management studio. I'm showing you here. Now, I'm going to show you one more thing because I wanted to be here. You're at home. You're on your computer at home. Do not do this at school. At school, we don't care if the lights stay on. We just leave the lights on all night. They stay on all weekend. It's the taxpayers that pay the electrical bill. We don't pay it, right? So at home, it's using your resources. I suggest I'm going to go back to this SQL Express, the service. I'm going to right-click him, and I'm going to go down to his properties at home. Not here, at home. Properties. And the startup type, notice the startup type is automatic by default. That means you turn on the computer, your database starts. That's usually the way it is. A database is the only thing that runs on this computer. Databases think they are anyway. Databases do not share resources very nicely. The joke is, how much of your memory and processor power does a database require? How much? All of it. How much you got? It's going to drink everything it can. So the name of the game is, this guy is not a friendly little nice program there. We want to shut this guy down when we're not using him. I'm going to change his startup type to manual. Now he will not start unless I go and start him. And if he is on manual, when your computer restarts for any reason, he won't start. Now, it's not a big deal. If your database engine is not started and you start your graphical user interface, the SQL Management Studio, everything's going to be just fine until you try to connect. And it's going to say, I don't know, nothing here. It's kind of like trying to put your car in gear and drive it before you get your engine running. Can you get in the car? Yeah. Can you turn on your radio? Yeah. But until your engine is running, you're not going anywhere. Okay. Same thing's true. But I'm not going to leave my car running all night in the driveway just because I don't feel like coming out in the morning and starting it. So what do you have to do? When he's stopped, manual. Now, if you restart the computer, you're going to stop him and he won't restart until you go back to this guy and say start. Okay. Now notice here I have two options: stop and one of them start, well, he's already started. If I say stop here, he'll stop. Now, as it's been pointed out, you can also find a way to stop him from within the Server Management Studio. However, I think that if you just come into the Server Management Studio cold, I don't think you can start it from within that. I think you'll have to go to your services to start him. That's okay. It's worth it on your computer at home. Fair enough? Okay. So I would suggest at home changing your startup type to manual and just go start him when you want him, and then when you're done with him, stop him so he doesn't drink all your memory. That's my thought, but if you don't do that, it'll be fine. SQL Server. Okay, so we have created two databases. My name underscore AP, and your name, of course, and my underscore DB, and AP underscore DB. I want that one named AP underscore DB. That will be our working database. That will be when we start turning in assignments, they're going to use that database. We'll come to that one in just a moment. Don't want to run out of time here. Okay, let's create a user. Under the Security tab, which one do you think I'm going to go to? Logins. My goodness gracious alive, you guys are quick. Logins. I'm going to right click. These are some that are automatically there. By the way, SA is the system administrator. Notice that he is disabled for a reason. But you have to, if you want to be the SA, you have to authenticate through Windows. You cannot come in from outside as the system administrator. You have to be physically sitting here at this computer before you can be the system administrator. But we're going to create a user that you could log in with whom you could log in remotely. And I'm going to, up here on logins, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say, I'll bet you know what I'm going to say, new login. Login. I'm going to give the login my name. Your name is not SW Smith. Give it your name, not mine. And SW Smith, that's good enough. And I'm going to click the login, the type as SQL Server Authentication. In other words, this guy isn't a Windows user. This is an SQL Server user. It's the way I want him. With me? Okay, give him a password. Give him the same password. I don't know your password, but if you forget your password, you can log in with Windows authentication as long as you're the same Windows user that you installed with. You can log in with Windows authentication and you can go change the password. Right? So that Windows user is pretty powerful. That's why we lock the computer up. For the most part, a database computer is the only thing, database is the only thing running on that computer. It is a dedicated computer, it is locked up, it is guarded 24/7 with big dogs that bite. Anyway. Let's see, confirm password. We can enforce the password policy. Password policy says, I don't know if you want to have a weak password, go ahead. You have to uncheck enforce password policy. We will uncheck enforce password expiration because I don't want to have to change the password in the middle of the semester. Blah, blah. Okay. And before you hit okay, I don't mean okay, default database. Default database. The master database, you cannot write to the master database. Your default database is master. We need to set your database. We're going to set your database to be mine will be swsmith_db. If I just create a table, that's where it goes by default into that database. Now, we can change that later if we want to. For right now, I set my default database to be swsmith_db. Yours will be your name _db, the one that you just created in the first step. Crises. No crises yet. Goodness gracious. Waiting for my whole world to crash here. I'm gonna pause a minute. Takes crises a minute to materialize, I have found. And there still aren't any. Everybody has their default database set. If you leave your default database set to master and you try to create a table, you will get, for your reading pleasure, an error message that says you can't write to the master database. You have to have one that you're allowed to write to. And I think that's going to work. Have I forgotten anything? We'll test it before we get out of here. We'll test it and make sure we can create a table or something. Okay. I'm going to say okay. Close this. Close this. Close this. And I'm going to click disconnect. You could just close it. I'm going to click disconnect. And then connect. I'm going to click the connect, but the little plug-in there. It's got a little cord. Click connect. And I'm going to give it my name. Oh, authentication. SQL Server authentication. So click, we're connecting to SQL Express. I could just as easily connect to one in New Zealand if I knew its name and its IP address. I don't care where it is. It doesn't have to be here. It just happens to be on this computer. We're connecting via TCP/IP. What is my login name? My name is SW Smith. Your name may be different. My password, I'm not going to tell you. You can click remember password if you want to. Don't do that in the real world. What is my problem? Are you getting, okay. We have to do one more thing. That's what I was, let's go back to Windows authentication and connect. We have to do one more thing. Databases, properties. Let me work through this one right quick. Okay. Owner of the database is let me go to logins, properties, user mapping, SW Smith, DB owner. Okay. I went to connect. I connected as Windows Authentication. I should have done this a minute ago. Windows Authentication, that's going to put me in as the, when I connect, I'm now the administrator. Okay. I'm going to go straight to security. I'm going to go down and find my username. My username is SW Smith. Right click, and I'm going down to properties. User mapping, the middle one, user mapping. User is SW Smith _ DB. Click DB owner. I'm making me own that database. Remember, I created the database as the system administrator, so SW Smith does not own it yet. So I'm making SW Smith the owner of that database. Are you with me? Should have done this right after I created the user. I should have made him the owner of SW Smith _ DB. I'm going to do one more. AP _ DB. DB owner. Okay. Need to go through that again. If I'm not the owner of it, there's other things I can be that would let me write to it. I could be allowed to write to it or read from it, and it would still let me log in. But the owner is as high of a level of privilege as you can get. That lets us do anything, create tables, drop tables, whatever. Now, I'm going to disconnect. Now, I'm going to connect as server. Now, I should be able to connect as SW Smith. And now I am connected. Now I'm going to go wild. Program away. I'm going to say new query. Let's test it. This is a program. I'm getting ready to program it. Ready? I'm going to say create table. I'm going to create a table. Let me run my font up so you can see it. Create table. I'm going to give him a name. I'm going to press enter. I'm going to open my parentheses. Parentheses are important. I'm saying create a table. The table is named foo. In the table is one field. The name of the field is fee. Fee, fi, fo, foo, fum, whatever. It is an integer. You've probably seen this happen before in Microsoft Access. I'm just basically, I want to see, can I create a table? If I can create one, I can create any of them. And now I'm ready to go, and I'm going to say execute. And I got a message, commands completed successfully, which was what I wanted to see. I wanted to see it take a command from me and say, yes, sir, 3 bags full, sir. Now I can create other tables. And that's what we're going to do in the first module, actually. So it doesn't matter what you name the table. We have just executed our first SQL script. We created a table, create table, and we give it a table name. Then we have the open parentheses. Inside of that, we have one or more columns. The column name comes first, followed by the type. Very similar to what you did in Access. In Access, you did the same thing. You just did it with a graphical user interface. And yes, we do have a graphical user interface for SQL Server. We're just not going to use it because this isn't graphical user interface 2309. This is SQL programming. So we're going to program in SQL. Everything we do, we're going to do in SQL. But I'm going to point out that sometimes that graphical user interface is nice to go over there and see what we did. And if you were to get in there and dig around a little bit, you'll probably find your GUI, your graphical user interface, and you can see your table that you just created. And yes, that's okay. We're not going to use it a whole lot. A question, sir? Is the question is on the capitulation, the capitalization of it. SQL Server, SQL in general is not case sensitive. By convention, and in my classes, it is case sensitive, and I'm going to talk more about this before I hold you responsible for it. Notice that the way I did it, see the part that turned blue? Well, those are reserved words. If it is a reserved word, I write it, and I would like for you to write it, please, in all uppercase. This shows me that you're watching what you're doing. If it is a word that you make up, like foo, for example, I could have been teetotally humswoggled, would have been fine if I could figure out how to spell it. It doesn't matter whether it's uppercase, lowercase. We typically write those in lowercase. However, if you like writing in, do you know what camel case is? Camel case? Camel, well, it's typically it starts with a lowercase, and then if there's more than one word in there, they begin with uppercase. So now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of the country would be N-O-W, capital I-S, capital T-H-E, T-I-M-E, and that sort of thing. That's called, you typically find that in Java. It's perfectly acceptable to write it in SQL. I'm going to be talking about the format of SQL. I am fussy about format. So that you would raise that question is good. But before I get real fussy with you, I'll tell you what I want you to do, okay? Other questions? You don't have to read my mind. I'm about to end the recording. I'll try to troubleshoot what's going on with that meeting ID. I suspect I just haven't logged in to Zoom. Go ahead and read. Now, in Module 2, we execute an SQL script. And we will start that. Those of you in the online class, well, anybody can read and execute the script. There's a script in there that when you execute it, it will create your database. And that's what we're going to do next time. But for right now, sufficient is unto the day is the evil thereof. But in Module 2, so you should go ahead and start Module 2. There's nothing wrong with going ahead reading it, and you really can't do anything terrible. Okay, recording is ending.